Hello everyone, welcome back to Crafts by the Bow. Today the light isn't brilliant. I've got a couple of extra lights on and I hope it's not too glary on the copper and on the little stamp set here. I'm using the Christmas Gleaming set and the paper that goes with this, which is called Brightly Gleaming, and it all has copper accents. So today my foil is going to be copper as well. And I'm using just the one little image and the one little sentiment. I'm not using the baubles because I've got lots of ideas of things I want to use the baubles for, but I don't want to only use the baubles. And sometimes I get a little bit overexcited about one or two stamps and I forget to use the other images. So today I made myself use this image and I actually love the card that I made. It's very simple, sort of classic style, and I think it looks really pretty. I might even include it in my stamper stack. I like it that much. So this is the set that we're using. And let me show you what else we're going to use. I've got some of the Delicata ink in the copper, and I want to use this for the sentiment. And I think when you use this Delicata inks, it almost looks like you've done some embossing. I don't know if you can see just the little shine on it there, but it's really an easy way to get that embossing look without having to stamp in Versamark, put embossing powder on, heat the powder, and I think it's a nice little touch. So I'm going to start with the sentiment because it takes a little while to dry. And if you've ever used these kind of metallic inks before, you'll know that the first time you stamp with them, it doesn't always come out as deep or as rich as you want. So I'm using my Stamparatus. I'm just going to take that off for a moment. But I'm using this so that I can stamp over the top of my first image. And if it isn't strong enough, I can easily stamp in the same place. So I've got just a little piece of Very Vanilla, and I'm not lining the stamp up on the card so that it's in the perfect position. It's just so that I can cut it out. I'm just gonna pop it there and put the lid of the Stamparatus down. And then I'm going to ink up the stamp. And when it's these metallic inks, I like to just rub a little bit to start with and then do a few taps. You seem to get more ink that way. And then I'm just going to close the Stamparatus down and just gently press. And when you open it, you can see it has stamped, but it's still quite pale in parts. And that's what I meant about it doesn't always stamp as richly as you would like it to. So I'm just going to go back over, push it down, and because we've got it in the Stamparatus, we know it's going to stamp exactly on top of the first stamp. Now that's stamped really nice, but I think if I do a third time, then I'll get that embossed look. So I'm just making sure I've got lots of the wet ink on there. There. Now I don't know if it picks it up on the camera, because you can see, hopefully, that because I've gone over 3 times, I now have, I think, a built-up image, and some of the edges of the writing, it does just look like you've embossed it. So I'm going to leave that to dry, and it does take a few extra minutes to dry this kind of ink. And I'm just going to wipe my stamp, take that ink off. Throw that away, and I'm going to move my stamp as well, and then I'm just going to put this to one side to finish drying. Okay, now let's make the base of the card. I've got basic card in the thick Very Vanilla, and that's just going to be just plain. I'm not putting any layers of card on top. I'm not putting any layers inside. I want it to be just the clean, simple look. So then I've got some of the Brightly Gleaming paper, and it's this one that has the like the decorations on, And I had a piece already cut at 2 1/4 inches. So that's what I've gone with. I haven't cut it down, I've kept it at 2 1/4 inches. And that's going to go on the front. And then I have some of the copper foil. I've cut this just 1/4 inch bigger. And I know that I want to do a backing for my oval here. So I've cut it out of the actual piece we're using. Nobody's going to see the middle of this piece. They're only going to see the edges. So there's no point, you know, cutting another piece of the foil card just to do this little oval with. I'm going to attach my paper. Get my fast fuse here. Just going to attach my paper onto the top of the gold foil, onto the top of the copper foil, I beg your pardon. And I'm just going to have a little border at each side. And it looks like this paper that's going on the top, oops, let me move that, is very, very slightly longer. I'm just going to trim that off. I don't want it to show on the bottom of the card. It's only a tiny little slither, but that would bother me. Okay, so now I'm going to just attach this as well. Ooh, that's making a squeaky noise. I think I'm going to use the wet glue. I don't like that noise that the fast fuse is making. Okay. And then I'm going to put it to the edge nearest the fold. And I'm only going to leave a very small border, sort of the same width, the 1/4 inch almost, as the copper foiling. Okay, so that's our base card made. Let's move that up just a little bit. There we go. I'll put that to one side. And then I've chosen the little holly stamp that I showed you. And I stamped it a few times on Whisper White card. And then I was looking at my blends to find out which of the colours I liked best for colouring the leaves and the berries. And what I actually chose was the Granny Apple Green. This was the shaded spruce. I didn't like that for the holly leaves. This was Old Olive, and it was okay, but it wasn't quite the colour I wanted. I liked the Granny Apple Green. So I'm just going to put that on here. And I chose the dark. And I very, very simply coloured. There was no shading. I just simply went over the leaves. And I only went over them once. And then I let it dry while I did the other leaf. And then I did go back to this leaf a little bit. So just let me colour this. And with these blends, you really don't need to push or press very hard. The ink just flows out so nicely. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my first one and just colour in a little bit more, just where they've got their lines for the leaves. And it almost gives you that shaded effect. And then I took the light cherry cobbler to do the berries with. And it really was very simple colouring. You could do this with your watercolour pencils. You could do them with just your ink pads as well. You could use an aqua brush or a blending brush and just dip into the ink pad and then go and do over the image. Then I'm just going to go over with my clear Wink of Stella. I'm not doing really intricate design work. I'm just going over the whole thing. And it will only be a very subtle glow or glitter, but that's all I need. And then there isn't a punch or a die that cuts this out. And I'm going to cut it out right on the black line. And when you cut out like this, I always like to have my piece that I'm cutting right at the base of the blade here. And once I've got the scissors into it, then I move the card with my other hand. I don't really cut much, I just move the paper, and my right hand, which is my cutting hand, it sort of stays still. And I found that's the easiest way to stay on the lines. Now, I've already cut one of these out just to save a little bit of time. So here it is, it's sort of glittery, and you can see I've cut on those black lines, but there are little bits where I've cut and there's white showing, and that's because I've stamped on white card anyway. So I just get my stamping right marker. You can use a pen like this, you could use a Sharpie marker, you could use your blending brush dipped in Memento ink, and I just go round the whole thing. And that way, none of the white shows. And it doesn't matter if you get the black ink on the back of the card, because you're not going to see it. And it just gives you that nicer finish. It looks like the whole thing blends together. And really, it only takes seconds, but it really does give you a nice finish. There we go. And now you don't have those little white edges looking at you. Oops. So now we've got the little copper foil piece that we cut from our strip here. And what I used for that was one of the layering ovals in the scallop design. And I used the next size down of the plain oval to cut out, let's bring this back, it's not quite dry, but just to cut out my, oops, my sentiment. It's because I've got that magnet there, it really wants to sit on top of it. So I just ran it through the big shot and cut it out like that, with the sentiment towards the bottom of the oval. So here's that little piece, and I'm just going to pop it on top of the copper foil scallop that we've got. I think this is one of those cards that you could make a bunch of really quickly if you just got all of your stamping done first, so that you had time to get it all dried and you had your ovals cut and everything. Then piecing them together would be really fast. Okay, now this I'm going to put on here on Stampin' Dimensionals, and I want to have it slightly to the left of here, so it's almost in the center of the whole card, but not sort of in the center of this strip, so more over to this side. And I'm just going to pop 3 little dimensionals on, and I'm only putting them at this left hand side. As I say, I think this one might just make the cut for my Stamper Stack evening, where we're going to be making 12 cards, and you can choose from 4 designs, or you can choose 4 designs, but there might be 5 or 6 designs ready, and you just choose the ones you want to make, and we make sort of a dozen cards and have a fun evening making them. Okay, now I've got this little piece. I'm just going to attach it here. I'm not going to put dimensionals on, I'm just going to put a little bit of the wet glue on the back. And then I'm just going to position it so that it's just hanging over my oval, but it's there on the oval as well. And that's it. I told you it was a nice, classic, simple card, and I think it looks really, really pretty. I think it's one of those that if it was on the mantelpiece, the light would shine because of the copper on here and the little bit of wink of Stella on the leaves, and I think it would really stand out nicely. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed watching that. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up. I'm trying really, really hard to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And at the moment, I think I have 845. And I would love to be able to get 1,000 because that's been my goal for this year. And then once I get to 1,000, I'm going to have a giveaway for some cards and a stamp set. So please consider just giving me a thumbs up or even sharing the video if you think you know a friend that might be interested. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye bye.